last year. And Rev Melora consulted her a year before that for another sermon. It's delightful to have her here in the pulpit with us today to hear her story. Sapita moved to Victoria in 2012 from Iran and started attending Capital UU in March 2019. She completed her doctorate at the University of Victoria and is currently working at UVic as a research scientist. Let us welcome Sapita Hidari.
Thank you, Molly, for that introduction. A few weeks ago, I received a call inviting me to participate in a pulpit swap with the First Unitarian Church of Victoria. I accepted it in a heartbeat, knowing that it would be challenging to create content that would be worth the time of an audience of bright and deep thinkers. After the excitement subdued, the anxiety took over. What would I, an ordinary girl from a simple and ordinary family from a faraway land, have to bring to the table that would appeal to this audience? I considered speaking about iconic Iranian figures, mostly women. Maybe Anousheh Ansari, the first Iranian woman who went to space, or Maryam Mirzakhani, the first Iranian and the first woman who won the Fields Medal, known as the Nobel Prize in Math. But these are exceptional women, and speaking about them will not shed light on why I have a sense of disbelief to be the speaker here. It doesn't show what it felt like to be invited to do this and why I took it to heart to do a good job. I decided to show you snapshots of my personal experiences of being a woman in Iran, in academia, and a woman and an immigrant in Canada. I hope what I share is not interpreted as how every woman and immigrant feels. Instead, I hope it offers glimpses of the geopolitical and cultural complexities of immigration and shed light on our subconscious biases in our everyday lives. This is my mom. She was born in Eklid, which is a small city, but was more of a farming village when she was a kid. As a young girl, Mom worked around the house, took care of younger sister and brother, and wove carpets that were sold to help family finances. Sometimes the carpets were gifted, like this one that she wove for her uncle. When Mom turned 18, the 1979 revolution happened in Iran, and a cultural revolution followed, which closed universities and limited access to higher education for all for 3 years. So she got married and migrated to Tehran, the capital of Iran. All her life, Mom's biggest regret was not having a university degree, not having a job and financial independence. Mom's biggest regret is my and my siblings' biggest blessing. We are absolutely psyched that she was always around, always volunteering for school projects, always present at every parent-teacher conference, and always supportive of Dad and his family. When I was 12, my paternal grandmother's dementia started a rapid decline. Dad's older and aging siblings, who to that day had tried to take care of their mom, decided to house grandma in a nursing home, a notion that is frowned upon in most Iranian families. Dad shared this news with Mom at our dinner table with a heavy heart. Mom said, "If nobody else agrees to share the care of your mom, I'll do it alone." Dad cried, a silent, grateful cry. When I was 17, I got my first job as an English teacher in a boys' elementary school. It was Ramadan, and I was fasting on my first day of work. The whole session was a complete disaster. And in 1 hour and 20 minutes, I only managed to call the roll. I dragged my starved body out of the class after the bell rang. I immediately called Mom, and in what I managed to blurt out of my mouth in between my crying, I told her that I can't do it. She said, "You promised to teach that course. Hey Daddy women do not break a promise." And she told me that there is nothing in this world that I can't do if I really want it. I reminded myself that Mom has seen a revolution, given birth to and brought up 4 children far from family during 8 years of war, and nursed my dad's demented parents while Dad was handling the same things, plus unemployment. As the daughter of that mother, I have no choice but to continue my teaching position. Today, I have more than 10 years of teaching at various levels under my belt. This is my dad now. When I was 8, I had a science assignment, and our teacher had given each of us kids different tree seeds and cones, and we were supposed to make some sort of poster with them. The night before the assignment was due, I realized that I had lost my batch of cones. I felt helpless and started crying. The next morning, Dad, who had come home from work very late the night before, woke me up at 5, drove 20 minutes to a forested part of the city that had evergreens, and helped me pick the cones that were close to what I had in my memory. I still associate my love and dedication to science to that morning, to the care that my dad showed to his little girl's science project at 5 a.m. when I was 8. These are my brothers. They are the most decent, tender-hearted humans I know. When I was 17, I was getting ready to go out with my friends. One of my brothers looked at what I was wearing, and God knows what sort of older brother protective hormonal state he was at, that he said, "Are you going out in that?" pointing to my relatively short and tight outfit by the Islamic standards, of course. I froze and don't remember now if I said anything, but my mom stretched her neck out of the kitchen, looked firmly into my brother's eyes and said, "Sepide has a mom and a dad. We decide if what she wears is not suitable. You don't have a say in this." Since then, they have not commented on my choice of outfit, unless I asked. This last summer, my brother and I were driving in Tehran when we noticed an unusual halt in an intersection. A female driver was in the middle of the intersection and couldn't manage to start the car. People were shouting and honking their horns, and she was clearly distressed. Abbas parked our car and walked to her in the middle of the street. His presence and his stern stare at the other majority male drivers silenced the honking. He told the lady to breathe and to take her time, and then guided her to start the car and get moving. I looked at him with pride, thinking, he is what this world needs, not the angry drivers, not me as the passive bystander that feels bad but doesn't do anything, and certainly not someone who goes there, tells the lady to get out of the car to do the problem solving for her, but someone who sees the problem and acts on it by empowering the person in need or distress. This is me, about 4 months after coming to Canada to attend UVic. I had participated in a writing contest and was attending the award dinner. This photo was taken at that dinner moments before a middle-aged Caucasian man approached me to engage in what I assume he thought was small talk. In less than 5 minutes, he managed to demonstrate fully how surprised he was to hear me speak English, that I had received my education in Iran, and that my parents allowed me to come here alone. He couldn't believe I would be able to get an education in Iran, yet he somehow thought I would be able to have access to information about Iran's nuclear program because he asked what I knew about it. It did not help when I broke it to him that I wasn't there to just eat the food, but because I had won the first prize in the nonfiction category. To this day, when I think of that day, the overshadowing memory is how that gentleman made me feel and how lowly he had thought of me, my family, and my country, which I was dearly missing. This is Azam. She's my sister, a mine engineering and the director of a soil mechanics laboratory in Tehran. When I was 16, I asked for her help with a calculus problem. She explained it to me and left to do whatever she was doing. A few hours later, I tried to solve the same problem on my own and realized that I had forgotten how. I asked her again, and she responded, but with the most frustrated attitude that you can expect from an older sister. I choked up and complained that she was always being helpful to everyone else, literally every kid in the neighborhood, our extended family, boys or girls, younger and older than her, with such grace and patience. And I didn't understand why in the world she was short-tempered with me. She said, "Because you're smart. I expect you to listen and learn the first time I explain something." I started to believe in my wits so much, and I assure you, she never had to explain anything else to me twice. A year after arriving in Canada, I gave a class presentation about interactions of brainwaves. The prof complimented me by saying, "This is probably the first time I truly understood the concept of brain oscillations. Thank you." I was talking with a male colleague after our class, sharing how happy I was when the prof said that. The classmate said in a condescending voice, "Oh, did you believe him? He said that because he sympathizes with your situation." I'll let this statement sink a little bit. He said that because he sympathizes with your situation. This short, unsolicited feedback stayed with me for many years. During my early formative years of being in Canada, even to this date, I find it hard to discern whether people's compliments are because they really mean it or because they feel sorry for me. This is me after successfully defending my master's thesis in cognition and brain science at UVic. I received a Canadian Psychological Association's Excellence Award for that research. A few hours after the news spread in the department, I bumped into a male colleague. He mentioned that he has seen the email announcing the news and asked mockingly, "How did you get the award? Were you the only participant?" As if that would be the only way I could ever win an award in science. A few years ago, I was traveling back to Victoria from Tehran. This was during the years that I used to wear a headscarf and was visibly Muslim. There was a delay and I was late for my connecting flight at Heathrow. I ran to the gate, sweating, panting, and crying because I was afraid to miss the flight and I was missing my family. I got to the plane, the flight attendant looked at me, checked the boarding pass, and I walked down the aisle to my seat. Everyone looked at me with eyes wide open and then looked away. I sat down and in a few minutes the plane took off. Pretty standard, right? Next year, the exact same situation repeated. I was coming from Tehran and was barely making it to my connecting flight at Heathrow. I was running, crying, and sweating, and at some point that I didn't notice, my headscarf dropped on my shoulders. I didn't care because I just wanted to get to the plane. I made it to the plane, and before showing my boarding pass, the flight attendant put her hand on my shoulder, asked me if I'm okay, and if I need water. I said yes. She took me to my seat and then left to bring me water. Without me asking, a gentleman offered to put my carry-on luggage above the seat, and the ladies on the row I was going to sit at asked if I'm homesick and offered tissues. I had no words. I could not understand what granted that outpouring of care and kindness in the second incident that was completely non-existent in the first scenario. The only thing I could think of that was different in the two situations was that piece of cloth on my head. I tried not to make a big deal of it and justified it by thinking, well, maybe these people were just kinder. Maybe you have confirmation bias. But later, when I was teaching the concept of subconscious bias through social psychology experiments at my Introduction to Psychology course at UVic, I saw that it is replicated over and over that under similar circumstances, bystanders are less likely to offer help to Black people and people of color. They are less likely to offer help if you're not dressed nicely. And they are less likely to interfere and break off physical abuse against a hijabi woman. When I look back at my journey, I realize that my flight experience led me to decide to stop wearing a scarf. I started to wonder, what other acts of kindness, help, friendly smile, offer of moving a luggage, invitation to dinner, carefree conversation about politics and religion have I missed because people felt like they can't approach me? It was those interactions with nice and friendly people that suggested polite discrimination, judgment, and bias that hurt the most, not the ones where the random guy on the street shouted and told me to go back to where I had come from. A few weeks ago, I attended a discussion about whether Victoria can move towards justice and be a better city after COVID. One panelist said, quote, "We need to welcome immigrants and refugees in our society. Canada depends on human resources and the vitality that immigrants bring. If you look at these people, they are mainly students and bring necessary skills, and some of them have gone through so much and are really resilient people." End of quote. These are the words of a person in charge of an organization that provides support to immigrants and refugees. I was quite shocked to hear those words, and as a Muslim Unitarian, I felt obliged to share how that statement makes me feel. We shouldn't welcome immigrants and refugees and those that look and think and behave differently from us because we need them and they contribute to the economic growth of this country, but because of the inherent worth and dignity in each and every person. As I reviewed these memories for this homily, I realized more than ever that I have lived a relatively sheltered life in Iran. A life where I wasn't exposed to the harshest forms of inequality, mainly because I was extremely lucky to be born into a loving and supportive family. Me and my sister had the same freedom and received the same treatment that my brothers did. In fact, one could argue that we were given more slack. Dad insisted on sports classes for me and my sister, and gave us permission to go on solo trips, a luxury that my brothers didn't have. While I lived in Iran, I didn't have to look far to find love, support, assurance, acceptance, and motivation. As I was not looking for love much outside of my core family, there was no point in taking crap from the society. In Canada, however, it was me on one side and the whole society on the other. There was no other unit to act as a buffer that I could lean on that would constantly remind me that I am good and enough the way I am. Over the years, this shattered my confidence. I started believing that I am not beautiful enough and that I can't do research good enough. I wore hijab during my first years in Canada. Among many reasons, it was because I wanted to establish precedent that you can be a woman, a Muslim from Iran, and get a PhD while wearing a hijab. But it was too damn hard. It is not easy when your three most visible sources of identity, your gender, religion, and nationality, is target for discrimination. The judgments and assumptions distorted my self-image and, for better or for worse, forced me through some serious existential and personal crises. When I first came to Canada, I did not know what to expect. I loved my home country and did not know that being from Iran and being a Muslim was an invisible baggage that I would be carrying around. People asked questions about Iran, and I felt pressured to always remain calm and behave in a way that does not reinforce the stereotypical Middle Eastern angry Muslim. It was exhausting because more than ever, I was feeling a pressure to prove that I am good, that I deserve to be here, and I have earned my education and my scholarship on my own merit. The mind of an immigrant can be a confused mind. It takes years of patience and constant attempt at working on yourself to find peace within yourself. No one should feel that they must excel at everything to be acknowledged and accepted in their community. My homily was not about exceptional Iranian figures or immigrants that make history, like Maryam and Anousheh. These success stories put unnecessary and unrealistic pressure on people who have already worked so hard to get where they are. I also didn't talk about harsh discriminations I faced as a woman in Iran or in Canada. The harsh examples are easy to detect and, frankly, are easier to get over. You convince yourself that the person hurting you is the one with the problem. Instead, today I talked about subtle acts of discrimination, the tangible everyday moments and actions of good-hearted people who still other immigrants or refrain from interfering or interfere by judging. I talked about experiences that make my talking in front of you today so far out of reach for some immigrants, even those raised by loving families, strong mothers, and supportive siblings, let alone those who arrive here with traumas and unimaginable adversities. What can we UUs do? Continue acknowledging the existence of racism. Treat people with respect. Be there for them. Every time I face a challenge, I thank God, the one and only Muslim and Unitarian one, that I can at least speak English to a level that gets me by. I picture a newcomer who struggles to form a sentence in face of adversity and remind myself to always stay alert. Keep my eyes open for injustice and inequality and be the voice of the voiceless, to make them heard and seen. It is incredible how these seemingly small experiences and acknowledgements can make such a world of difference, highlighting a shared humanity in connectedness and trust. Our closing words are from a Unitarian minister, the Rev. Dick Gilbert. We bid you farewell, who came with weary spirit seeking rest, who came with troubles that are too much with you, who came hurt and afraid. We bid you farewell, who came with hope in your heart, who came with anticipation in your step, who came proud and joyous. We bid you farewell, who are seekers of a new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you farewell, who entered this hall as a homecoming, who have found here room for your spirit, who find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you farewell and salam. And now the choir will sing Blue Boat Home.